The Finance Minister is appearing before Parliament's committees on finance to explain the budget he tabled on Wednesday. This is a chance for MPs to pose some of the questions they have about the spending plans. Let's listen in.
Poor communities use community rail. One of the things we're doing in this budget is to invest much, particularly on signaling, to reduce the time for the train. For poor communities, we make this thing in the statement that if you are in Naledi now, you will have a train in every 10 minutes. If you are in Khayelitsha, you will have a train in every 10 minutes. That's our ambition. And I made the point that the World Bank study shows that one of the difference between your rand for rand, a South African worker and a South Korean worker, the difference in terms of disposable income is because the South African worker pays a lot on transport. So I thought I should make those remarks as far as the DG is going to present to understand where we are heading to. We may be taking a wrong direction, but we might understand where we're heading to. That's what we want members to appreciate. Thank you very much. DG.
Thank you very much. Over to you, DG.
Thank you, Honourable Chairs. Good morning to you and the Honourable Members and all the colleagues here today. My name is Duncan Peters. I'm the DG of the Treasury. The presentation, as the Minister has indicated, sets out a budget that we believe is a budget that sets the scene for us to be able to invest in the right kind of things for faster growth. So we always start this presentation with the economic outlook. We'll talk about how the various strategic investments in infrastructure can support job creation and growth. We will also then indicate what all of this means for the fiscal framework, and then of course articulate the decisions that are being taken on the tax and the spending side and what that then means for the fiscal framework. The next slide shows the global growth outlook. We always start putting together a fiscal framework with our macroeconomic forecast, and the starting point of that forecast is what's going to happen to global growth. So in the near term, we expect global growth to remain stable at 3.3%, which is below the historical average, and there are quite significant regional differences. In the US, for example, they are experiencing upward revisions to growth, while in the euro area, they are challenging with growth because of their own geopolitical tensions as well as the broader global uncertainty. Inflation has continued to ease, but in many parts of the developed world in particular, structural constraints such as low productivity and aging populations limit their long-term growth potential. On the next slide, we go into the South African forecast for growth. We project growth of 1.9% in 2025 from a revised estimate of 0.6% in 2024. This growth does reflect weaker than expected GDP outcomes in both the third and the fourth quarters. We expect growth to average 1.8% from 2025 to 2027. Household consumption has been revised lower, while gross fixed capital formation or investment and government consumption is revised higher. We will, of course, also incorporate in future growth forecasts the outcome of the fourth quarter GDP numbers, which were released a week before we tabled the budget. The next slide then just outlines the risks. On the domestic side, logistics challenges remain a constraint. There are some unfunded spending pressures that we are concerned about. In particular, the Minister would have spoken in previous engagements around things like PEPFAR, which have not entered the fiscal framework yet, as it were. Faster than expected easing in interest rates and inflation is an upside risk, potentially, because that would boost consumer spending. There are some potential also positive upside risks from domestic food prices that could benefit from a recovery there. And on the revenue side, greater than anticipated withdrawals from two-pot retirement would lead to higher than anticipated levels of both consumption and revenue. On the global side, there are heightened concerns over escalating protectionist risks and geopolitical tensions and what that means for global growth as well as commodity prices. A strong US dollar may cause capital outflows, although, interestingly, the rand remains one of the best performing emerging market currencies against the dollar, which of course for us helps because it limits imported inflation and therefore keeps prices in South Africa lower. There are some limited upside risks globally also from the implementation of structural reforms in other parts of the world. The next slide then outlines our medium-term economic strategy, which is anchored by 4 pillars or 4 priorities. First, maintaining macroeconomic stability and reducing volatility to reduce the cost of living and encourage investment. How? Because if you have macroeconomic stability in place, you will benefit from lower interest rates and therefore lower cost of capital and lower cost of borrowing, which supports investment. Implementing structural reforms is the second pillar and remains important in order to promote a competitive economy while addressing the various constraints to job creation. Building state capability is a very important priority, in particular for Operation Vulindlela Phase 2, which will focus, amongst other things, on digital transformation. And then finally, and the slides will talk to this in greater detail, infrastructure investment, and we'll return to that later. The next slide then just summarizes the one key pillar of the growth agenda, which is structural reforms. In phase 2 of Operation Vulindlela, we will be following through on some of the existing reforms in electricity and logistics in particular, but there are also some new priorities for phase 2. On the local government side, institutional governance and financial reforms to address the root causes of deteriorating performance and service delivery at a municipal level. On the spatial inequality side, creating dynamic cities through things like resolving the title deeds challenges, resolving some of the land use and permitting related issues, as well as significant investments in commuter rail, which the Minister spoke to earlier. And then on the digital transformation side, there are significant investments in digital.
All right, you were listening there to the voice of Treasury DG Duncan Peters. He's appearing before Parliament's Finance Committee as Treasury details the reasoning behind this week's budget that was tabled by the Finance Minister. We'll continue listening into that as he continues to give the context around the economic landscape, if you like, upon which that speech was delivered. But news on the go coming out of the Thohoyandou High Court. The man who's been convicted of killing 7 of his family members is currently being sentenced. Enoch Godongwana, of course, was found guilty of those murders dating back to 2021, giving judgment as Judge Chidada. Let's listen in.